Madhava kunj giridhari Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha giridhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha giridhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Rangana Yashodanandana Brajajana Rangana Yamuna Tira Vanashari Yamuna Tira Vanashari Jai Radha Madhava kunj giridhari Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava kunj giridhari Radha Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Madhav, Radha Madhav, Radhe Radha. Jai Radha Giridhari, Radha Giridhari, Radhe Radha. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Gaura Simanandi, Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa, Pri Rajagacharya Stotra Satya, Sri Simad, His Divine Grace, Sirabai Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, ISKCON BBT, founder Acharya's Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki, Namasarya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Giridhari Shri Dasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki, Shri Vrindavan Mathura Dham ki, Shri Dwarka Dham ki, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki, Shri Navadip Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Mayapur Chandradev Mandir ki, Gangamayi Jamunamayi ki, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi ki, Hari Nama Sankirtan ki, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki, Transcendental Book Distribution ki, Jai Shri Shri Gaunitai ki, Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi ki, Jai Shri Krishna Balarama ki, Jai Shri Giri Govardhana ki, Jai Shri Radha Giridhari ki, Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Ajnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Takshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jita Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Syam Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Rishakanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagattate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayat. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistike. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama-shloka charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya lokasya Dhanyam swasyayanam mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, as Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Shri Surabhyaya Namaha. Om Shri Surabhyaya Namaha. Om Shri Surabhyaya Namaha. Mukam karoti vachalam pangom langayate girim yatkripat maham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam yatkripat maham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. We are continuing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 1, Chapter 18, text number 34. 34. Yes. Brahmanai Ksatra Bandhur Hi Griha Palo Nirupitaha Sa Katham Tad Grihe Dvaha Staha Sabandam Bhuktum Arhati Brahmanai Ksatra Bandhurahi Griha Palo Nirupitaha Sa Katham Tad Grihe Dvastaha Swakatham Tad Grihe Dvastha Sabhandam Bhoktum Arhati Brahmanai Ksatra Bandhurhi Griha Palo Nirupitaha Sa Katham Tad Grihe Dvasta Sabhandam Bhoktum Arhati Brahmanai Ksatra Bandhurhi Griha Palo Nirupitaha Sa Katham Tad Grihe Dvasta Sabhandam Bhoktum Arhati. Brahmanai, by the Brahminical order. Okay. Kshatrabandhu, the sons of the Kshatriyas. He, certainly, Grihapalaha, the watchdog, Nirupitaha, designated, Saha, he, Katham, on what grounds? Tat Grihe, in the home of him, the master. Dvahastaha, keeping at the door. Sabhandam, in the same pot. Bhoktum, to eat. Arhati, deserves. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The descendants of the kingly orders are definitely designated as watchdogs, and they must keep themselves at the door. On what grounds can dogs enter the house and claim to dine with the master on the same plate? Kindly repeat after me. The descendants of the kingly orders are definitely designated as watchdogs, and they must keep themselves at the door. On what grounds can dogs enter the house and claim to dine with the master on the same plate? Purport. The inexperienced Brahmana boy certainly knew that the king asked for water from his father, and the father did not respond. He tried to explain away his father's inhospitality in an impertinent manner, befitting an uncultured boy. He was not at all sorry for the king's not being well received. On the contrary, he justified the wrong act in a way characteristic of the Brahmanas of Kali Yuga. He compared the king to a watchdog, and so it was wrong for the king to enter the home of a Brahmana and ask for water from the same pot. The dog is certainly reared by its master, but that does not mean that the dog shall claim to dine and drink from the same pot. This mentality of false prestige is the cause of downfall of the perfect social order. And we can see that in the beginning, it was started by the inexperienced son of a Brahmana. As the dog is never allowed to enter within the room and earth, although it is reared by the master, similarly, according to Sringi, the king had no right to enter the house of Shamika Rishi. According to the boy's opinion, the king was on the wrong side and not his father, and thus he justified his silent father. The translation again: the descendants of the kingly orders are definitely designated as watchdogs and they must keep themselves at the door. On what grounds can dogs enter the house and claim to dine with the master on the same plate? So these are the words, very, we can say, harsh or strong words spoken by Sringi, this Brahmana boy, who became very disturbed, very upset at this incident. And as will be seen later, when his father comes to know of his sons having cursed Parikshit Maharaj, this boy's father, who was qualified Brahmana, did not approve of the harsh action taken by his son against Parikshit Maharaj. So in the purport, Prabhupada makes reference to the mentality of false prestige. Actually, this is the danger that is there for everyone, especially those who assume or take up different positions in society. So the scientific system of Varna and Ashrama will work very nicely when this false prestige is not there. But it will not work properly, and it will be it will present all kinds of problems and difficulties when members, especially those in higher positions, exhibit this, we could say, disqualification of false prestige. False prestige means closely connected with the feeling of pride. Pride is connected with ahankar. Ahankar. And pride is also connected with enviousness. When Krishna speaks to Arjuna, this is in the very beginning of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna begins by explaining that, my dear Arjuna, I will now present to you the highest of knowledge. 9th chapter deals with king of knowledge. Yeah, Rajavidya. Rajavidya. Idam tute guyatamam pravakshyami anasuyave. This is the first verse in the 9th chapter before Krishna speaks Rajavidya Rajaguyam. Idam tute guyatamam. Now I will speak to you very confidential subject matter. I am speaking to you confidential subject matter because actually the whole subject matter of dharma and bhakti is something that is very confidential. I will speak this knowledge to you. I will reveal this knowledge to you. Why? anasuive, because you're not envious, because you're not falsely proud, because you have actually accepted me as spiritual master. This is a very important point, that in the beginning, as we know, the conversation or exchange between Krishna and Arjuna was on the platform of friendship. But it is only when Arjuna, understanding his position of perplexity, that he submitted himself and accepted Krishna as his teacher. So this is a very important principle which practically from the beginning of Kali Yuga, from this particular incident of this young Brahmana boy, Sringi, feeling overly proud of the status of Brahmana, he prematurely, or as Prabhupada explains, due to his being inexperienced, he misused his Brahminical power by cursing Parikshit Maharaj. So that means that actually all the members who are part of the system of Varnasrama, if that system is to function properly, they must imbibe this quality of, regardless of their position within the social order, they must imbibe this quality of submission. Prabhupada explains actually how just like a drama, what happens when someone plays a particular role on stage? Did anyone ever play in a drama? Yes? You're good. So drama, Prabhupada explains, everyone knows that even though one may be dressed as a king and goes on the stage, he's not really a king. He's playing that role of the king temporarily. So in that context, Srila Prabhupada explained that for a devotee, this social system of Varna and Asrama is meant to be seen just like a drama. I may be taking the role of a Brahmana, but actually I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, first and foremost. I may be taking the position of a Kshatriya. I may be the president or prime minister of a country where everyone has to follow my orders. But that is secondary. First and foremost, I am a servant of Krishna. Means when all the members of the 4 social divisions and also the 4 members of the spiritual divisions, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, when they always keep this in mind, when they act based on this concept that we are all humble servants of Krishna, then there can be harmony. But as soon as there is some material motivation, as soon as there is some tinge of false prestige, as demonstrated here, Sringi, because of being still very young boy, he overly reacted, and to curse someone to die is a very heavy curse, and especially directed at such an exalted personality. The Parikshit Maharaj, the king, or actually monarch for the whole world. So, so therefore, this any tinge of this material consciousness means bodily consciousness. Any tinge of false prestige or pride will naturally lead us to make all kinds of mistakes, to commit various mistakes. The whole of Kali Yuga has been an example of this, especially in the context of varnasrama, and therefore that is why there is so much of fear, so much of resistance regarding the social arrangement that is referred to as varnasrama. So this is very important. Regardless of what a role or position we play within the system, if we maintain the proper mood or mentality. So that's why even someone who might be serving as a brahmana, or Prabhupada explains also, that just like if I am a sannyasi is considered a highest order within the system of varna and asrama. But if a sannyasi, for example, walks in the temple and sees that the temple is not clean and takes a broom, that doesn't mean that the sannyasi is now a sweeper, an ordinary sweeper. Whatever activity one may perform, regardless of one's position, when that activity is performed for the service of Krishna in love and devotion, then those activities are not at all considered material, and therefore the danger of judging someone simply by external or material activities or material designation also. So this is the point being mentioned here by Srila Prabhupada. That means that to actually rectify, to actually properly reintroduce what is meant to be the natural social arrangement in society, all the members, regardless of their position, need to develop this higher understanding or higher consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness. So that's why Prabhupada speaks about classless society. What is the meaning of classless society? Prabhupada speaks about the four movements, right? Prabhupada speaks about four movements. Not everyone knows about four movements. What are the four movements that Prabhupada speaks about? Those are referred to actually in Srila Prabhupada's essay on Gitanagari. Unfortunately, most people have not read Gitanagari. And unfortunately, many people don't even know that there is such a thing as Gitanagari. Prabhupada wrote an essay many years before going to the West. In 1956, if anyone has the folio, right, Veda base, you can find it in the Veda base under compilations. Yeah. Gitanagari. I believe it's the same category as you will find also speaking about Varnashram, which is a compilation by Hare Krishna Dasi on all the important references and quotes given by Srila Prabhupada on the subject matter of Varnashram. It's quite a big book actually, because there are many references and explanations given by Srila Prabhupada. So, in that book or essay, actually has not come out as a book, not yet been printed for whatever reason. In that essay, which appeared in Back to Godhead magazine way back in 1956, Prabhupada speaks about four movements. He gave each movement a name, and the fourth one he called classless society. The first one he calls Sankirtan movement, referring to the chanting of the holy name and distribution of transcendental literatures. The second he called deity worship movement, means establishing temples and installing deities. The third movement he called, what is it? Spiritual initiation movement. Sankirtan movement, deity worship movement, spiritual initiation movement. And the fourth he called it classless society movement. So what did Prabhupada mean by classless society? You have to say a bit more than that. Not only, he spoke of Varna and Asrama, but what does it mean, Varna and Asrama, in the context of classless society?
Varna Sankara, as you said.
Huh?
Varna Sankaras.
Varnas?
Sankara.
Varna Sankara.
Those who do not follow any.
No.
Or those who are beyond all these Varna and Ashram.
No. Daiva Varnashram. What does Daiva Varnashram mean?
All Varna and Ashram should be centered to please Krishna.
All the Varnas and Ashramas?
Their aim should be to please Krishna.
Yes. Should be performed for the same purpose of serving and pleasing Krishna. Yeah. So classless society means there is no material tinge, no material motivation amongst the different social or spiritual divisions. For example, in the Varnas, the Brahmana is considered the highest. And the Brahmana is the one who is given respect and whom people take guidance from. In the ashramas, the sannyasi is considered the highest, and from whom people take spiritual direction. Even though that may be the case, when all the members, especially those in the higher positions, are fixed on this principle of everyone understanding his position as servant of Krishna, engaged in activities of bhakti, then there will not be any clash. We can also say that classless society means clashless society. It will be clashless society because there will be no false egos to clash. Isn't it? Yeah. Our problem, all of us in the material world, our problem is this ahankara, this false ego, which is connected with false identification, false prestige, which is connected with enviousness. But when we understand ourselves perfectly well as a humble servant, then we have no reason to clash. A devotee, for example, is able to accept any and all kinds of situations that happens to him, knowing it as, well, it's either providence or it's my due karmic reactions that are taking place. So in other words, a devotee who develops this mentality has no experiences, no problems in this material world. This is the mentality as nicely shared by Prahlad Maharaj. Isn't it? Prahlad Maharaj in the Bhagavatam explains, for me I have no problem. I have no problem in this material world because I have the holy name. Because I'm able to chant the holy name, because I understand myself as being a humble servant of the Lord. And whatever may happen, Krishna is allowing this to happen, either because of my previous sinful activities or Krishna is arranging in this way. So someone who develops this consciousness can live very happily and peacefully in the material world, even though the material world is full of problems. But for a devotee, he doesn't see them as problems. And therefore Prahlad Maharaj goes on to explain, for me I have no problems, but I have problems for those who are not yet knowing about the holy name. I have no anxiety for myself, because I know that Krishna is looking after me. But I am very much in anxiety for those who are not Krishna conscious, because Krishna is not looking after them. Maya is looking after them. Or Krishna's external energy. So this is the mood and mentality of a devotee, of a Vaishnava. He is not, he can function nicely in any kind of situation. He can very nicely work also within the system of Varna and Asrama, because he's not caught up with the material bodily designations, or he's not on the false ego platform. So in other words, the system of Varna and Asrama within society can only be properly established when we have this understanding, when the focus becomes centered. So that's why, as you mentioned, Daiva Varnasram or Daivi Varnasram, it's used, both terms are used. means, although these are material designations, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, these are material designations, but when they are, when the activities are performed for serving Krishna, they no longer remain material activities, isn't it? So this is being referred to here in the case of Sringi, who, although the son of a Brahmana, was not mature in his understanding, and therefore should have considered this, although it was irregular, definitely it was irregular to do what he did, for Parikshit Maharaj to do what he did, he was irregular. But as we will see, when the king comes out of his meditation, he will chastise Sringi for having acted immaturely and for having so severely cursed such an exalted personality as Parikshit Maharaj. Any possible questions or comments? Yes?
Maharaj, if Sringi is an experienced boy,
Yes.
how it can affect his curse can affect a great personality?
If Sringi is an inexperienced boy, how can
His curse affect great personality like him? He is not
how his curse can be effective?
effective.
Is it? Yeah. Well, I may be, for example, the son of a Kshatriya, and I may know archery. So, even though I know archery, it doesn't. If I misuse that art of archery out of immaturity, even though I am not mature, I still can shoot arrows. So in a similar way, a Brahmana may be immature, but he still has some the Brahminical power. And therefore, as in this case, when he misuses that power, it acts, even though he's immature. His decision to use that power is immature, but the power remains effective.
Maharaj, another question arises from this only. After he misuses power,
Yes,
and after he offended a great devotee of the Lord,
yes.
what was his destination? Did he lose his power? Did he lose his position? That is not mentioned. We never heard what. And what?
So what is not mentioned, we should not comment upon it. If you're asking what happened to Sringi, the only thing that we know was that he was chastised. Whether he lost his Brahminical power or not, very often that is what happens, because whenever we commit offenses or go in any way against the principles or the law of dharma, then at some point we lose our ability to do even simple things. I think there are many examples in the Mahabharata where, yeah. Can you think of one?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for you to tell.
Huh?
Waiting for you to tell.
No, who is it that he was cursed that because he committed some offense, when the time comes to remember the mantras, you will not be able to remember. Karna, eh? Yeah. But there are many similar examples that some particular point, any kind of offense to devotees or not acting on the principles of dharma, at some particular point some reaction will come. So in this edition of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because there are many editions, in the heavenly planet maybe it's mentioned. Isn't it? We have one of the shorter editions, only 18,000 verses. But there are other editions spoken by other sages. That's mentioned actually by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Satsandarbha. In the beginning of Satsandarbha, he mentions how, because the whole Sandarbhas are in glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam, and how Srimad Bhagavatam actually is more important than any other literature, even more important than the original Vedas, because they provide more explanation, as given by Srila Vyasadeva, who's an incarnation of the Lord, who's not different from the Lord, and therefore he has given more clear explanation than the original Vedas. And that's why Srimad Bhagavatam is having such an exalted position. So in the introduction of his Satsandarbha, he explains how we have the smallest edition of the Bhagavatam on the earth planet, and then there are two other editions. One is in the heavenly planets, and one is in Pitri Loka or something, some other place, where there are. So maybe, not that you should go there, but maybe maybe there's more information, more elaborate explanation on this particular point. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yes.
Generally, when we are chanting our japa, we are advised to sit in a place and chant around.
Yes.
But sometimes devotees, they feel asleep or feel laziness, so they are moving and chanting.
Yes.
So some of the speaker had heard, they are telling if you will do japa with the movement, then there will be loya and vikhep those. And you will not progress in your devotional practice. Hence you have this loya and vikhep.
That means
Attention distraction. This will affect you, and your devotional practice will not allow you to progress in that bhakti yoga. Is it correct?
Okay. You are telling that normally when we do our chanting, we sit at one place and we concentrate on our chanting. And sometimes we see that devotees don't always do that for different reasons. One of them may be that they're feeling a little sleepy. So they stand up and they walk chanting. And your point is that you have heard that those who actually chant their japa walking will not get the proper...
With movement.
Yeah, walking usually is with movement. I've not seen anyone walking without movement. Well, walking with movement. So you're telling that...
that is laya and vikhepa.
What is that in English?
Laya is attention, vikhepa is distraction. You will be...
Inattention and distraction.
You will not be focused on the chanting with proper attention. Rather distraction will be there. And laya and vikhepa, for which his devotional progress will not be there. Okay,
well, I have not heard this, and I have seen Srila Prabhupada chanting his japa walking.
Exactly.
Does that mean that Prabhupada is becoming distracted?
Yes.
So, unless one can sometimes we hear things of that nature, but then whoever is telling this, we should ask them, can you kindly give the reference in the Bhagavatam or in any statement made by Srila Prabhupada that we cannot chant walking, you know. I have not heard this, and I have not read any reference to that effect also. I don't think it's part of the course of Bhakti Shastri that if you walk, if you chant your japa walking, you are in Maya. Have you read anything like that? I've never read. Yeah.
I have questions. I thought I didn't make it like this is Maharaj because he will give us knowledge.
Well, the question that comes immediately is, where is the reference on this statement, or yes, that by chanting our japa walking and making movement, that we will be inattentive or not getting the result. I don't think there is any reference for that, and therefore we can only accept as true and valid what is based on Shastra, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So there are so many things that are coming outside of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, and therefore that's how we can understand if it is bona fide or not. Of course, if one is chanting, looking all over the place and not being attentive, then his chanting also will not be so good. Yeah. Ideal method for chanting actually is to be sitting and to be fully concentrated, and otherwise one can also be chanting not sitting, but then one should try to be attentive as well. Yeah. So I don't think we can accept that simply because somebody is walking and doing his japa walking, that automatically he is in Maya and his chanting will not be effective. Whatever we are doing and wherever we are doing activities, it all depends on the consciousness, isn't it? So if we have good consciousness when we are walking and doing our japa, then that chanting will be effective. Yeah.
When I heard it immediately, Prabhupada's japa is working, that came to my attention. I told Prabhupada is doing, how he is telling that Maya and Dikha will be there, and now in progress in devotional practice. Prabhupada while talking, we are doing this nice japa. It's a great exalted personality to change the shape of the globe and to fulfill the desire of Mahaprabhu.
Yes.
He is not at least applicable to Prabhupada. He is just very such a bona fide and very exalted Vaishnava. And with what references he had not given any name, anything, but told repeatedly that one. So that came to my mind now that Maharaj is here, I should ask that question.
Yes. Voila. Okay. Any other?
Maharaj, when we worshipping the deities, we often recite this verse. I am not a Brahmana, I am not a Kshatriya, I am not a...
Yes.
That verse is there, Brahmana.
Yes,
We
yes.
are not 4 varnas and 4 ashrams.
Yes.
But so at the same time we have to act according to the whatever varna and ashram is there. A woman has to act according to his body, a male has to act according to his body. And there is also another beautiful person that is a servant of Krishna. So when these things are applied, like in what circumstances should be applied, when these things are applicable, I want to know. If I mix here and there, then...
Okay, so your point is that we must always be keeping in mind this prayer actually recited by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that I am not a Brahmana, that I am not a sannyasi. I am servant of the servant of the servant, yes. At the same time, we have this system of varna and asrama, so your question is how to know, how to apply these two situations. It's a question of developed consciousness or purified consciousness. As Prabhupada explains, a devotee, he always remembers within, in his mind, in the depth of his mind or in the depth of his heart, that he is but a simple and humble servant of Krishna. But he will accept to take on some particular role or responsibility within the system of varna and asrama. And that's why Prabhupada used the word drama. We should regard or look upon the system, the social system of varna and the spiritual system of asrama, as like we are playing a drama. So maybe in this life, because of different reasons, I'm playing the role of a Brahmana. But I actually have nothing to do with being a Brahmana. I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. Just like when we go on the stage, I have nothing to do with this particular role, but for the time being. So for the time being on the stage is a very short time, usually half an hour, 1 hour. For us, for the time being means our whole life. Our whole life we are caught up in some kind of material designation in terms of the social system of varna, isn't it? But the more we are developed in consciousness, we will not allow this particular role of my being either a Brahmana or my being a sannyasi in terms of ashram to interfere with my first and foremost being a servant of Krishna, isn't it? That is the basic and first instruction given by Lord Chaitanya. Jiver Swarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas. We are all eternal servants of Krishna, even though we play or accept different roles. So it's a question of practice, number one, and it's a question of maturity and purity in consciousness. So in the case of Sringi, for example, he was lacking this maturity. He was inexperienced. So in the beginning of spiritual life, we are inexperienced in many ways. Gradually, as we endeavor nicely, sincerely to serve under the guidance of ultimately Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, then we will become more experienced and we will know how to act under all circumstances. It's understandable in the beginning that there may be some periods or situations that may not be clear, in which case we consult with higher authorities, but the more one becomes experienced, then one will be able to nicely adjust in all situations. Yeah. It will come naturally, automatically, based on our level of purified consciousness. And that's what Krishna consciousness is all about. The more we apply the process, we become purified in consciousness, and Krishna, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, Krishna gives us the intelligence how to deal with all kinds of situations. Those who don't practice Krishna consciousness, they're not given that intelligence, and that's why they continue making unlimited mistakes, and that's why they continue being constantly in anxiety as well. But for a devotee, the more one becomes a sign of advancement for a devotee is that he is not in anxiety. He's not in material anxiety. He will be in spiritual anxiety, as we mentioned in the case like Prahlad Maharaj, in spiritual anxiety about others who are not taking advantage of the human form of life and taking advantage of the knowledge given by the devotees of Krishna. we will close here for this morning. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki.